So what I wanted to do is just share with you a little bit of what we see happening in the market. Can everyone hear me? Because I wonder when I talk. So okay, thank you very much. And wanted to share a little bit about what we see in the market, talk a little bit about how we're working with customers, and specifically have some examples at the end as well. But I wanted to start maybe with something that doesn't look all that positive, and this is really about what we call digital Darwinism. And the 52% is quite an interesting statistic because it's actually the number of companies that have disappeared from the Fortune 100 between the year 2000 and 2015. Yeah? So the Fortune 100, by the way, is the blue chip, safe bedrock of the economies that we have. So it's really interesting to see. I mean, we went through obviously a challenging time, but really I think a large part of that was that a lot of those companies didn't catch on to the digital wave, to the way customer behavior was changing. And actually, what we start to see now is an interesting time for new companies as well. Because actually, if we start looking at those companies that have been around for a long time, what's interesting is, in the 1920s, the average age of an organization was 67 years old. Yeah? Does anyone in this room work for a company that's been in existence for more than 10 years? 20 years? 30 years? Oh, I should put my hand up as well, but, Okay, so, again, what we do see is we see this pace of companies moving very rapidly, and we see the age of companies changing, yeah? And we see a lot of birth of new companies as well, and we think that digital is giving a rise to these new companies. And so if you think about it, you have these big mature organizations who have very rigid processes and ways of working, and you have these young companies who are coming and disrupting this place. And so they are what we refer to as dangerous babies. Yeah? So they are small little companies that are causing an enormous amount of disruption. And it's fantastic. And the reason it's fantastic is because it's making us rethink processes. Yeah? So I wanted to touch on a couple of examples, actually starting in the middle. There's an organization called the Dollar Shave Club. And they're a US organization, and I believe what they do is that they offer a subscription service for razor blades and all the accessories so men can shave regularly. Yeah? And what was interesting was they are now up to about 1 million subscribers in the US. And just recently on the news or on the adverts in between a program in the UK, I think it was Gillette now offering subscription as well for shaving. Yeah? So what's really great is we're seeing changes being brought about by these disruptors, and they are forcing the bigger companies to change as well. And I'll explain why I think that's happening in a minute. The other one is Warby Parker. I think they're an Australian organization. And for those of you that wear sunglasses, when I go try on sunglasses, first I'm not allowed to do this without my wife because she's my fashion advisor and she has to walk next to me while I wear them. But essentially what we want to do is we try on about 10 different glasses, don't we? And then we think these are the ones that we want. So what Warby Parker did is very simple. They provide an online experience where essentially you choose a number of glasses, they put them in a box, they send them to your house, you can try them on with your clothes or no clothes, whatever your preference, yeah? And essentially you can decide which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to send back. It's a fantastic model, but it changes the way that people buy glasses and the traditional, let's say, optometrist model that exists. So it's great that we have these disruptors. And the last one I wanted to touch on was Under Armour, and probably people recognize them for the clothing and the sporting wear that they do. But actually, Under Armour has recognized that for them, the big opportunity is not actually just in footwear and apparel, let's say, not just in clothing, but actually the interesting opportunity for them is the devices they put in to all the clothing and all the data they collect. Yeah? So essentially, does anyone wear an activity bracelet thingy to measure steps and activities and all of that? It's quite commonplace. Of course, Under Armour, I think, has one of those as well. But essentially what they've done is that allows us to track, of course, what we've burnt, what we've used. Yeah? What, of course, we don't track is what we put in so that we can calculate the difference. So there's an app called MyFitnessPal. Who's got it on their phone? I do. Right? So Under Armour, congratulations, you're all Under Armour customers, but Under Armour is trying to work out now how they can utilize that data to become more of a health based organization than a clothing-based organization. And the health market, by the way, is bigger than the clothing market. So these are all things that we're looking at and how digital is disrupting these traditional models. Yeah? And it's fantastic. And I think the reason that they are successful, yeah, is because, and we touched on it earlier, they're putting the customer first. Yeah? It's all about the customer experience. But the point of the study here, what's really interesting is Forrester and Watermark Consulting did some work together. They went to a number of companies. They gave each company a customer experience index. So they rated how good they were at customer experience. And then from 2007 to 2014, they tracked the performance of those companies on the S&P 500. And what you see is you see 107% for those companies who were good at customer experience in terms of share price, yeah, and growth. And you see the S&P 500 was around 73. And then, of course, you see those that were not very good, yeah, obviously having a lower return. So there is a direct impact in terms of those organizations that are good at customer experience and obviously have the ability to deliver and create innovative products as well. But if they focus on the customer experience, the returns are fantastic. Yeah? So how do we deliver this great customer experience? And I think it was talked about a lot earlier as well. We know that there are many, many channels. Yeah? We know that there is a lot of data floating around. And I think this is an underestimate. Yeah? That 11 systems, I think, is not realistic. And certainly, I think as you go to some of the bigger companies, it's much, much more. Yeah? So the challenge that this creates is really that nobody has this single view of customer. I think we got close before digital, before the internet, because it was just dependent on what people put into the system. So it was easy. You could tell when somebody went to go and see someone, then they put it in the system and you have a single view of customer. But now with all the channels we have, it's no longer simple to create the single view. Yeah? So the other challenge that we have is now how do we also capture not only the single view, but how do we use that to understand customer intent? Yeah, it's obvious if I'm browsing around something online and I read product specifications and I watch a video and read the how-to guide, whatever it is, I'm very interested in that product, whereas I browse over other products. And the same applies in store. So if I hover around a certain aisle or a certain category of the products, of course, that's expressing my interest. So we should capture this intent, add it to the single view, and make sure that we can utilize it to make personalized recommendations. Yeah. So that is what certainly our research says is the big challenge, and I think certainly from the discussion, it seems to resonate as well. So certainly what we've done, and you probably know Hybris from the omni-channel commerce conversations, well, we've grown that portfolio considerably, yeah? Essentially to start helping us look at what we do around helping you create that single view of customer on top of what we do for the omni-channel commerce. So we talk a lot about the 4 marketing Ps, and thank goodness, I think Martin mentioned them earlier. Well, we've created the 4 Ps of customer data, and we think they are just as important. And so effectively, if we start looking at what people do to market to their customers, to understand their customers, typically they all start in the same place, which is to understand what customers we have. So we look at all the historical data, what they've bought, what they've returned, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah? Typically what we do is we then mix that with some public data. That could be third-party data, it could be data that they post on social for us, et cetera, et cetera. Typically then we start to analyze to try and get a better understanding of the customer as well. In reality, what we start to do then is we start to talk to some of these data scientists, I think that they spoke about, or data experts, to run it through a predictive model to try and understand what the customer might do next. Yeah? And then there's one more P that's probably the most important P for the customer donut. Does anyone want to guess what it is? Close. It's a timing element. It's the present. What's the customer doing right now? Because you don't need to send them an offer if they're on the website looking at terminations of a subscription. Yeah? You need to change the strategy and retain them. Yeah? So timing is everything. Timing gives you the context. You can have all the data about the past that you want. You can mix all your public data. You can do your predictive models. But if you don't know what that customer is doing right now, you miss the context. you miss the ability to apply the data. So essentially what we focused on now is to start looking at the customer. What is that customer doing, or what have they done? Yeah? What are they doing now, and what may they do? Yeah? So this is about relevance. Then what we've got to do is we've got to understand what they are doing in the moment, and how can we influence what they do in the moment. Ultimately, then delivering that message, that contact, that engagement, through whichever channel they prefer. So this is what we've been focusing on, really, is that contextual marketing linked with the omni-channel capabilities that we have. How do we do that? And I wanted to just touch on this very briefly as well. I think, as Martin said, there's been a lot of organizations that have built up a multi-channel strategy, and as the channels evolved, web comes up, we build a web. Yeah? Then mobile, we need a mobile platform, so we build a mobile site. Then social comes in, we build some social stuff. Then blah, blah. And so we keep building all these channels. And that was great 5 years ago, when first to channel was important. But the game has changed, because it's no longer about first to channel. It's about delivering a consistent experience through the channels. And that's the important part. That's what differentiates organizations, yeah, and experiences that we have with customers. So first, we're delivering all of those channels. We're delivering a consistent experience through those channels. And then we're able to collect all the data from the channels that we put into the data management layer. So we have a big data tool set. And on top of that big data strategy, by the way, we built our marketing platform. So we have combined in one system big data and marketing. Why is that important? Because that's the only way you can do real time. So as the data comes in, we run predictive models or whatever the strategy is, and the system says, oh, we think this customer who's online right now should get this promotion. And you can't do that if you disconnect the data, which is your knowledge, your understanding of that customer, from how you execute the channels. So that's what we've been doing as Hybris, connecting the big data strategy to the commerce platform, to the marketing platform. We can drive billing processes and subscription if you want to start mixing your product sales with subscription sales, yeah? Like we do for H&M, by the way. We can also then expose that data to a direct sales team or to a customer service team as well. And that's how we're delivering and digitizing the end-to-end process for our customers. Where are we doing this? And by the way, we do that whole portfolio in bite-sized chunks. So I know it looks like a lot. It is a lot, yeah? But it's all on the cloud, and you can take pieces as and when you need them, and you grow your strategy as and when you mature as well. And we do that for big companies, and we do that for small companies. So for example, we're working with Red Bull. One of the big challenges they had was really understanding, let's say, the journey from the unknown customer to enticing them to share information so that they could then drive the correct merchandising and brand strategy for that customer. Yeah? How are they doing that? Essentially, they consolidated all of they have 8 brands. Anyone from Red Bull here? Because that would be easier. No? Okay. So they have about 8 brands because they consider their brands Red Bull Racing, aeroplanes, DJ, radio, etc. I didn't know they had all of those, but they have about 8 of those. They consolidated them onto the Hybris website or onto their Hybris platform, and then essentially have started to use the big data so that as they see the customers jump between radio and racing or aeroplanes and racing, they start to understand the kinds of merchandising and cross-sell and upsell opportunities that are becoming available to them, yeah? And making then real-time recommendations. ASICS is another one that we work with. In this case, they have then an omni-channel strategy with us, which encompasses both physical and, of course, digital in terms of the strategy. And in this case, what we're working on with them is really that front-end experience, the remarketing for basket abandonment, and making sure that when customers come back, known or unknown, that we're promoting the right products based on what they have done or categories they've looked at. And then also, of course, collecting all of that information and making sure we have a single view of that customer.